The Philippines, a nation of over 7,000 islands, but did you know its very name was given in honor of a Spanish king? This simple fact opens a doorway into a long and complex history. It is a story of exploration, conquest, and the birth of a nation. The name itself carries the weight of centuries. It speaks of a past shaped by foreign powers, yet it is also the name that a proud and resilient people have claimed as their own. To understand why this archipelago is called the Philippines, we must travel back in time. We must look at maps drawn by early European explorers and listen to the stories that have been passed down through generations. It is a journey that reveals how a name, once a symbol of colonial rule, has been transformed into a banner of national identity and unity. Scattered across the western Pacific Ocean, the Philippine archipelago is a breathtaking mosaic of natural beauty and cultural richness. Imagine more than 7,600 islands, each with its own unique character. Some are crowned with volcanic peaks, while others are fringed with pristine white sand beaches and vibrant coral reefs. This geographical diversity has given rise to an equally diverse cultural landscape. Over 100 distinct ethnic groups call these islands home, speaking a multitude of languages and dialects. From the terraced rice fields of the Ifugao in the north to the colorful vintas of the Samabajao in the south, the Philippines is a living tapestry woven from countless different traditions, beliefs, and artistic expressions. This inherent diversity is the soul of the nation, a vibrant energy that existed long before the arrival of any foreign ships. Before we delve into the Spanish chronicles, it is crucial to appreciate this pre-colonial world. The islands were not a blank slate waiting to be named. They were a bustling hub of trade and culture. Communities thrived along the coastlines and rivers, connected by intricate networks of maritime trade that stretched across Southeast Asia. They had sophisticated social structures, their own systems of writing, and rich oral traditions filled with epic poems and folklore. These early Filipinos were skilled sailors, accomplished artisans, and resourceful farmers. They lived in a world where the spiritual and the material were deeply intertwined, a world that was about to be changed forever by the arrival of men from a distant land, carrying a foreign cross and a royal decree. The name they would bestow upon these islands would mark the beginning of a new and often painful chapter. Understanding the origin of the name Philippines is more than just a historical exercise. It is a way to connect with the very heart of the Filipino experience. It helps us understand the layers of influence that have shaped the country's identity. The story begins not with a single proclamation, but with a series of encounters, misunderstandings, and assertions of power. It is a tale that involves brave native chieftains, ambitious European explorers, and a powerful monarch sitting on a throne thousands of miles away. As we unravel this story, we will see how a name given to a small group of islands eventually grew to encompass an entire nation, and how the people of that nation would ultimately redefine what that name means to them. Long before the Spanish galleons appeared on the horizon, the islands we now know as the Philippines were known by many names. To the Chinese traders who frequented their shores from as early as the Song dynasty, the archipelago was often referred to as Ma'i. This name, found in ancient Chinese texts, likely referred to the island of Mindoro, a bustling center of commerce where Chinese merchants traded silk, porcelain, and beads for local goods like beeswax, cotton, and pearls. Ma'i represented a land of opportunity and exotic products, a testament to the island's active participation in the wider maritime trade network of Asia. Other Chinese records mention places like Luzon and Sulu, indicating that they recognized the archipelago not as a single entity, but as a collection of distinct kingdoms and trading ports, each with its own identity and significance. These islands were not waiting for outsiders to give them a name. They had their own. While no single unifying indigenous name for the entire archipelago has been found in historical records, the people identified themselves by their specific island, region, or ethnic group. A person might have been known as a Tagalog, a Visayan, an Ilocano, or a Maranao. Their identity was tied to their immediate community, their bayan or barangay. This localized sense of self was fundamental to their worldview. The concept of a single unified nation spanning thousands of islands was a foreign one, an idea that would later be imposed and forged through the shared experience of colonization. The richness of these local identities is a legacy that continues to define the cultural fabric of the modern Philippines. When the first European explorers arrived, they too began to label these unfamiliar lands. The most famous of these early encounters was led by the Portuguese explorer Ferdinand Magellan, who sailed under the Spanish flag. In 1521, Magellan and his crew landed on the island of Homenhon during the feast day of St. Lazarus of Bethany. In honor of this occasion, and in the name of the Spanish crown, he christened the archipelago Las Islas de San Lázaro, or the Islands of St. Lazarus. This name, however, did not stick. It was a temporary placeholder on European maps, a fleeting first impression that would soon be superseded by a name with far greater political weight and permanence. Magellan's voyage marked the beginning of Spain's interest in the region, setting the stage for future expeditions that would seek to claim these islands for the Spanish Empire. Other names also floated around in the minds and on the maps of European cartographers. Some referred to the islands as the Archipelago del Poniente, or the Archipelago of the West, simply because they were reached by sailing west from Spain. This name reflected a purely Eurocentric perspective, defining the islands only in relation to their geographical position from Europe. It lacked any connection to the people or the place itself. These early names, Maí, Luzon, Las Islas de San Lázaro, Poniente, all tell a part of the story. They show us a world of diverse, self-identified communities and the first attempts by outsiders to categorize and claim a land that was already rich with its own history and culture. A new name was coming, one that would change everything. The name that would ultimately define the nation was bestowed 2 decades after Magellan's ill-fated voyage. In 1543, another Spanish expedition set sail from Mexico, then known as New Spain, with the mission to establish a permanent Spanish presence in the East Indies. This fleet was commanded by Ruy López de Villalobos. His journey was fraught with hardship, including storms, starvation, and hostile encounters. After months at sea, Villalobos and his crew finally reached the shores of the archipelago. They were desperately in need of supplies and a safe harbor, but they found the local populations wary and often unwilling to trade, remembering the conflicts that had marked Magellan's visit. It was in this challenging context that a decision was made that would echo through history. Desperate and seeking to curry favor with the Spanish crown, Villalobos decided to name the islands he encountered in honor of the heir to the Spanish throne. At that time, the Crown Prince of Spain was Philip, son of the powerful Holy Roman Emperor Charles V. To honor this young royal, Villalobos named the islands of Leyte and Samar las Islas Filipinas, or the Philippine Islands. The name was a strategic act of political flattery. It was meant to please Prince Philip, who would soon become King Philip II, one of the most powerful monarchs in European history. By naming the land after him, Villalobos was symbolically claiming it for the prince, and by extension, for the vast Spanish Empire. This simple act set in motion the process of renaming an entire region. It is important to remember that Villalobos' naming was initially very specific. He did not name the entire archipelago Filipinas. He only applied the name to a small cluster of islands in the eastern Visayas region. The rest of the archipelago, including major islands like Luzon and Mindanao, were still known by their local names or were simply considered part of the larger, vaguely defined East Indies. The name Filipinas was at first just a small label on a vast and largely unexplored map. It was a seed planted by one Spanish commander, a name that held the promise of royal patronage and imperial ambition. Little did anyone know that this name would grow to cover all the islands scattered between Luzon and Mindanao. Despite his efforts, the expedition of Ruy López de Villalobos was ultimately a failure. He was unable to establish a permanent colony and after facing continued resistance and starvation, was forced to seek refuge in the Portuguese-controlled Spice Islands, where he eventually died. While Villalobos himself did not succeed in conquering the islands, the name he coined survived him. It appeared on official Spanish reports and maps sent back to Europe. The name Las Islas Filipinas had a royal connection that made it far more appealing and official than Magellan's Islands of St. Lazarus. It was a name tied directly to the source of imperial power, and it was this name that the next Spanish expedition would carry with them when they finally succeeded in establishing a lasting foothold in the archipelago. The name might have faded into obscurity if not for the success of the next major Spanish expedition. In 1565, an expedition led by Miguel López de Legazpi arrived, and this time, the Spanish were here to stay. Legazpi was a skilled administrator and diplomat, and he succeeded where his predecessors had failed. He established the first permanent Spanish settlement in Cebu, and later he moved the colonial capital to Manila in 1571. As Legazpi and his forces expanded Spanish control northward to Luzon and southward toward the Visayas, the name Filipinas expanded with them. It was no longer just a label for Leyte and Samar. It became the official administrative term for all the territories under Spanish dominion in the region. The process of the name's expansion was gradual, mirroring the pace of Spanish conquest and colonization. As Spanish soldiers, missionaries, and administrators pushed further into the archipelago, they brought the name Filipinas with them. Every new island brought under the authority of the colonial government in Manila was incorporated into the political entity known as. The name became a tool of administrative consolidation. It provided a single, convenient label for a vast and diverse collection of islands and peoples who had never before seen themselves as part of a single unit. The name, born of a desire to honor a king, was now an instrument of colonial governance, a way to define the boundaries of Spain's new prize in the Orient. The Catholic Church played a significant role in cementing this name in the consciousness of the people. Spanish friars, who were often the first Europeans to reach remote villages, established parishes and missions throughout the islands. In their records, sermons, and teachings, they consistently referred to the land as they converted the indigenous population to Christianity, they also introduced them to this new identity. For many newly converted Filipinos, to be Christian was to be a subject of the King of Spain, and to be a subject of the King was to live in the land of. The name became intertwined with the new religion and the new social order that the Spanish were building, spreading through catechisms and church documents. By the 18th and 19th centuries, the name was firmly established both within the colony and on the international stage. It appeared on all official documents, maps, and scholarly works about the region. For the Spanish colonizers, it was a symbol of their imperial achievement. For the people living under their rule, it became a simple fact of life. They lived in Filipinas. While their local and ethnic identities remained strong, this overarching colonial name provided a new, broader layer of identification. It was a name imposed from the outside, but it was slowly becoming the common denominator for a people who were beginning to share a common history of subjugation, and eventually, a common desire for freedom. Throughout more than 3 centuries of Spanish rule, the name was the one and only official designation for the colony. It was spoken in the halls of the Governor-General's palace in Intramuros, written in the meticulous records of the galleon trade, and taught in the church-run schools. This long period of use deeply embedded the name into the administrative and cultural life of the archipelago. The Spanish language, though not universally spoken by the masses, was the language of government, education, and the elite. As such, Filipinas, with its distinctly Spanish spelling and pronunciation, became the standard. It was a name that carried the full weight of Spanish cultural and political dominance, a constant reminder of who was in power. The transition from the Spanish Filipinas to the English Philippines was a direct result of another major geopolitical shift at the end of the 19th century. In 1898, the Spanish-American War broke out, a conflict that had its roots in Cuba, but whose consequences were felt across the globe. As part of its war strategy, the United States Navy under Commodore George Dewey sailed into Manila Bay and decisively defeated the Spanish fleet. This event marked the end of Spanish colonial rule and the beginning of American occupation. Following the Treaty of Paris in 1898, Spain ceded control of the Philippines to the United States. With this change in colonial masters came a change in language and, consequently, a change in the country's name. The new American colonial administration made English the official language of government, commerce, and education. This linguistic shift had a profound impact on the country's identity. The Spanish name was anglicized. The F was replaced with PH, a common spelling convention in English for the /F/ sound, and the name became the Philippines. The plural Islas, islands, was often dropped, though the country was still commonly referred to as the Philippine Islands. This change was more than just a matter of translation. It symbolized the transfer of power from one colonial empire to another. The country now had an English name to go with its new English-speaking colonizers. This anglicization became widespread and permanent. The American instituted public school system was particularly effective in propagating the new name. Generations of Filipinos were educated in English, learning to read, write, and think of their homeland as the Philippines. Official documents, currency, and postage stamps all bore the New English name. Over time, Philippines became the standard name used internationally, and eventually within the country itself, even when people were speaking local languages. The shift from Filipinas to Philippines is a clear linguistic marker of the country's complex colonial history, showing how its identity has been shaped and renamed by successive world powers. As a Filipino national consciousness began to emerge in the late 19th century, the colonial name of the country became a subject of debate. For some Filipino thinkers and revolutionaries, the name Filipinas was a painful reminder of their subjugation. It was a name given by their conquerors in honor of a foreign king who represented the very empire they sought to overthrow. This sentiment led to discussions about adopting a new, indigenous name for the nation they hoped to create. A name that would sever ties with the colonial past and reflect the true pre-colonial spirit of the people. This debate was a crucial part of the intellectual awakening that fueled the Philippine Revolution. Several alternative names were proposed by prominent figures in the independence movement. Andres Bonifacio, the founder of the revolutionary society known as the Katipunan, favored the name, or the sovereign nation of the Tagalog people. For Bonifacio, Tagalog did not just refer to a specific ethnic group but was used more broadly to mean all people born in the archipelago, literally people from the river. Another proposed name was, in honor of the national hero Dr. Jose Rizal, whose writings had inspired the revolution. Artemio Ricarte, a general in the revolution, suggested the name. These proposals showed a deep desire to forge a new identity, one that was rooted in their own heroes and their own concept of nationhood, free from the shadow of King Philip II. Despite these compelling arguments for a name change, the name Filipino itself had undergone a powerful transformation. Originally, the term was used by the Spanish to refer to a Spaniard born in the islands. The indigenous people were derogatorily called. However, during the propaganda movement, nationalist intellectuals like Jose Rizal and Marcelo H. del Pilar began to reclaim the term. They proudly called themselves transforming a word once used to distinguish the colonial elite into a name for the entire nation of people struggling for equality and freedom. By the time of the revolution, to be a Filipino was to be a patriot, a member of the new nation-in-waiting. This redefinition of Filipino is perhaps why the name Filipinas ultimately endured. The revolutionaries, while fighting against Spain, were also fighting for the right to define what it meant to be Filipino. They declared the first Philippine Republic, using the very name given by their colonizers, but filling it with a new meaning of independence and self-determination. When the Americans took over, and later when independence was finally achieved in 1946, the name Republic of the Philippines was retained. The name had become too deeply intertwined with the nationalist struggle. It was the name under which heroes had fought and died, and it had become a symbol not of the Spanish king, but of the Filipino people's own fight for their place in the world. Today, the name Philippines stands as a powerful testament to the country's layered and often tumultuous history. It is a name that undeniably originated from a colonial act, an homage to a Spanish monarch who never set foot on its shores. This origin story is a permanent reminder of the 3 centuries of Spanish rule that profoundly shaped the nation's religion, culture, laws, and social structure. It also reflects the subsequent half-century of American influence that changed its language of power and education. The name itself is a historical document, a linguistic artifact that tells a story of foreign domination. It speaks to a past where the identity of the islands was defined by others for the benefit of distant empires. However, the meaning of a name is not static. It is defined by the people who bear it. Over the centuries, the people of the archipelago have taken this colonial name and made it their own. The term Filipino has evolved from a class distinction used by colonizers to a unifying national identity embraced by a diverse population. It became the banner under which revolutionaries fought for freedom and the title of a republic built on the aspirations of its people. The name Philippines no longer solely evokes the image of King Philip II. Instead, it brings to mind the resilience, warmth, and vibrant spirit of the Filipino people. Their ability to endure hardship, to find joy in community, and to forge a unique and beautiful culture from a complex blend of influences. The journey of the name from to the Republic of the Philippines is a mirror of the Filipino people's own journey toward nationhood. It is a story of transformation and reclamation. The name's survival through revolution and a change in colonial power shows its deep integration into the national consciousness. While debates about its colonial origins occasionally resurface, for most Filipinos today, the name is a source of pride. It represents their home, their heritage, and their collective identity. It is a symbol of a nation that has looked its colonial past in the eye and has chosen to build its future on a foundation of unity and strength, all while carrying a name that connects it to the wider story of world history. In the end, the question of why is it called the Philippines leads to a richer understanding of what it means to be Filipino. The name is a paradox, a symbol of both foreign subjugation and national liberation. It acknowledges a difficult history while celebrating the indomitable spirit of a people who have defined themselves on their own terms. The story of its name is, in essence, the story of the Philippines itself, a beautiful archipelago of incredible diversity, with a past marked by struggle, but a present and future filled with the promise of a proud and unified nation. If this story gave you new insight, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Which country's name should we uncover next? Drop your suggestion below.